Turkey says it opposes Sweden and Finland NATO membership. Zelensky says Kremlin defeat is obvious. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia's strategic defeat is already obvious, accusing the Kremlin's forces of trying to hide the truth with missile, air and artillery strikes. His comments come as Russia is seen investing significant effort around the cities of Izium and Severodonetsk in a bid to achieve a breakthrough in eastern Ukraine. According to UK military intelligence. A Russian soldier is due to stand trial on Friday for killing an unarmed Ukrainian citizen. It marks the first alleged war crime since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began on February 24. Meanwhile, top diplomats from the Group of Seven, G7, wealthy nations gathered in northern Germany on Thursday for a three-day meeting centered on Russia's invasion. Rigged referendums are central part of Russian strategy in Ukraine, says UK ministry. A request from authorities in Kherson, Ukraine, to join the Russian Federation is part of Moscow's strategy to use rigged votes to place Ukrainian regions under Russian control. UK Defense Ministry said Saturday. A central part of Russia's original invasion plan was highly likely to use rigged referendums to place the majority of Ukraine's regions under long-term pro-Russian authority, the ministry said in a regular intelligence. Kherson's administration, which was imposed by Russia after its troops took over the city in March, this week formally requested that the Kherson region be made part of Russia. The fact that Russia has only succeeded in imposing a pro-Russia local leadership in Kherson highlights the failure of Russia's invasion to make progress towards its political objectives in Ukraine. The British minister Russia will almost certainly manipulate the results of any referendum held in Kherson to decide whether to leave Ukraine, the defense ministry said. Russia's defense ministry was unavailable for immediate comment. Kherson lies on the Dnieper River near the Black Sea, only about 60 miles, 97 kilometers, from Crimea, which Russia took over the last time it invaded Ukraine in 20. Invading Russian troops took control of Kherson in the early part of the current war, but the Ukrainians who live there have carried out public protests against the occupation regardless. Ukraine's military said in March that Russian troops used stun grenades and gunfire to break up at least one of those protests. Moscow claims its troops do not target civilians, despite overwhelming proof that they have done so in Ukraine. Ukraine war is about the future for Western countries, Zelensky says. President Volodymyr Zelensky said although Ukrainians are doing everything they can to drive out the Russians, no one today can predict how long this war will last. This will depend, unfortunately, not only on our people, who are already giving their maximum, he said in his nightly video address to the nation. This will depend on our partners, on European countries, on the entire free world. He said he was thankful to all those who are working to strengthen the sanctions on Russia and increase military and financial support to Ukraine. This is the only recipe for protecting freedom in the face of the Russian invasion. And for Western countries, this is not simply an expense. This is not about accounting, it's about the future. Zelensky said Ukraine on Friday shot down the 200th Russian aircraft of the war, and he noted Russia's heavy losses in tanks, armored vehicles, helicopters and drones. And for what? So that the Lenin statue can stand for a bit longer in temporarily occupied Genechesk? There is and can be no other result for Russia. Russian forces in April restored the Lenin statue in Genechesk, a town in the southern Kherson region. Zelensky said Ukraine was engaged in very difficult negotiations to try to evacuate the wounded fighters trapped in the Mariupol steel works. We're talking about a large number of people. Of course, we are doing everything to evacuate all of the rest, each of our defenders. We have already brought in everyone in the world who can be the most influential mediators. Zelensky said Ukrainian forces have retaken towns and villages from Russian troops. He said work was underway to restore electricity, running water, telephone communications and social services. Russia to halt electricity exports to Finland. Russian state-owned utility company Interal will halt exports of electricity to Finland starting Saturday, the company's Finnish subsidiary said. Brown Nordic, the subsidiary that imports electricity from its Russian parent company, said that it will stop supplying Finland because it hasn't received payment from Finnish sources in recent days. We are forced to note that for the volumes which have been sold on Nord Pool exchange since the 6th of May, funds have not yet been credited to our bank account, the company said in a statement. This situation is exceptional and happened for the first time in over 20 years of our trading history. Power imports to Finland will be halted from 1 a.m. local time on Saturday for the time being, Finnish grid operator Fingrid said in a separate statement, citing Brown Nordic. The lack of electricity import from Russia will be compensated by importing more electricity from Sweden and by generating more electricity in Finland, said Reima Pavinen, Senior Vice President of Power System Operations at Fingrid, a state-owned business, said imported electricity from Russia has covered about 10% of Finland's total consumption. The stoppage comes as Finnish leaders warm up to the idea of joining NATO in response to Russia's aggression in Ukraine. Russian forces are at least 2 weeks behind schedule in eastern Ukraine, U.S. defense official says. The Pentagon said Russian forces are still about 2 weeks behind schedule in their assault on the Donbas in eastern Ukraine. The official said that in recent days, the Kremlin has moved more Russian troops into Ukraine, but that those forces are not making any major gains in the eastern Donbas region. The forces have regressed in other parts of the country, the person said. We've basically assessed that the Ukrainians continue to make progress in reclaiming towns and villages around Kharkiv, the official, who declined to be named, said on a call. We have seen some progress by them pushing Russian forces closer to the border and away from Kharkiv.